Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Multi-Entity Management. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar will take roughly 45 minutes, followed by a short question and answer period. A few housekeeping notes to be aware of. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can raise your hand and ask questions. Please submit your questions via the questions panel. Our presenter, Darian, will be happy to take all of your questions at the end of the webinar. At this time, I'd like to introduce Darian to Sir. Darian comes to us with over 20 years experience in the SMB mid-tier ERP space, with 11 years experience in technical support, 4 years as a Dynamics GP Microsoft certified trainer, and 5 years consultative sales experience for Dynamics GP. It's all yours, Darian.
Great, thanks Deidre, and hello everyone. Welcome to the multi-entity management demonstration from Binary Stream Software. So here's a little slide about Binary Stream Software itself. So just a quick overview of Binary Stream. So we've been a gold certified partner for many years. We have almost 1,200 end users. Almost half are using the product that you're going to look at today, which is multi-entity management. And it is sort of our flagship product here at Binary Stream. We're gaining maybe 5 to 10 end users a month. We're getting a lot of partners and end users recognizing that we really have a good solution, and for any organization that has multiple entities that want to run on a single GP database. So again, here are the key points for multi-entity management itself. Obviously, if you have multiple legal entities and you want to run them all in a single GP database, then multi-entity management is for you. So there's a lot of advantages and corporate in performance increase and enhancements by bringing your organization into this type of environment. So the standard GP configuration is a single database to a single company. That works okay once you have a few companies, but once you start getting up to many, then it starts to become a bit cumbersome. We're going to talk a bit about some of those points that you run into if you're not running into them already. Our solution is a solution that is fairly horizontal, so we can fit into almost any industry, and you'll find that we can tailor our solution to work from 1 to 10 GP users with anywhere from a few companies up to as many as they need, and right up to some really large low tier 1 customers who are even NYSE publicly listed, for example, or billion-dollar companies that have almost 200 GP users and run almost 350 entities. So the ability for us to do that all has to do with the back end of Microsoft SQL, and the robustness of that product allows us to work in that scope. As an example of some of the things that we can do with our product, it's all about TCO and ROI. So you'll see one of the quotes from one of our larger customers that I dealt with at Convergence about a year and a half ago let us know that they had 53 divisions on SAP. They moved it to our solution with Dynamics GP, and by doing that over 18 months, they'd reduce their total cost of ownership by 55%. So it was a pretty significant move in itself. So we can have large ROI gains from if you're a really large organization, and we can extend the life of your Dynamics GP if you're at the smaller end. Here are some of the advantages of moving to multi-entity management, which includes moving to a single database environment. Things like in our solution, we can offer centralized processing. We make it very easy for you in the single database to perform either centralized payments, where you have a parent company have the ability to pay their own invoices plus invoices on behalf of other entities with the central parent bank account. And we can do the same on the receipts side, where we can have a head office or a central location take in all the receipts and apply those receipts not only to their own invoices but to other entities as well. And when we do that, it kind of leads into my third point on the slide, which means that when we do that process, we'll also do intercompany completely during that process. And in fact, any transactions you do in our solution, we will manage the whole intercompany process for you. So what you're going to see shortly is that with our solution, every transaction that you enter will have an entity identifier to say who owns that transaction, and the minute you enter a distribution that's away from that entity, we're going to do a do from anywhere in GP, be it a transaction in payables or receivables. It could be a bank transfer, a fixed asset transfer, etc. Anywhere where you want a transfer to occur, we're going to manage that due to, due from between entities. Another key point in our solution is the ability to share master file records. So inventory, customers, vendors, and accounts can all be part of the same, master file records in the single database solution. So, for example, you can find that in our solution, we can have one vendor. There could be 10 invoices, one per company entered for that vendor, and in our solution, it will be actually 10 invoices under that one vendor. And then our software has the ability to then filter the information, so a user can just filter out what they want to see for which companies that they want to see that information for, either based on what they select or based on what access they have to those entities. And again, you're going to see me talk about this with the product in just a few minutes. Nice thing that I hear from partners and end users about multi-entity management is that when it comes to month-end reporting, it's very simplified and easy to manage. So you'll find that, yes, you can have multiple entities in Dynamics GP with separate databases for financials, say in a tree in either FRX or Management Reporter. But it just seems to be when you add an entity in our solution, the whole process of managing the reporting all the way down through subledgers, etc., is way easier in our product. In the standard GP environment, where if you have custom reports for consolidated information, etc., you're going to have to add all that entity information as you add more entities and so on. Another nice thing too is that we offer the ability to secure users in the single database to only see the entities they have access to. So there could be 100 companies in a single database, and if I'm only allowed to log in and look at company 1, then multi-entity management can lock me down so that I can only see company 1 and perform transactions, inquiry reports in company 1, and not be able to see those other 99 companies in the single database environment. Also, some other points that I want to say about moving to multi-entity management or the single database environment if you're not used to that environment is geocoding is a lot more consistent, especially if you keep your chart fairly uniform between all your entities, then it becomes very easy to manage. We do a lot of things around adding the distribution codes to default per the entity that you're entering it for, and it makes that a lot easier. Also, from an IT perspective, the ability to maintain just a single database instead of multiple databases is a lot easier to manage for IT from a day-to-day basis in terms of backing up, etc., right up to the points where you're going to save capital costs on when you have to do the upgrade of Dynamics GP every few years. So if you've been through upgrades and you have multiple databases, you know there's going to be some additional capital costs for that. If you're able to use our solution and eliminate the other databases over time, upgrading one database every so often will save you a lot of money. And then finally, a big point we get to around moving to a single database is the ability to eliminate logging in and out of multiple databases or multiple companies. There's lots of prime examples that we have around, and you can work this out for yourself. If you're in this situation, just take how many entities you have, find out how many users, look at those entities on a daily basis and how long it takes for them to go between them. Then you can multiply that out and you can have an ROI number, which a lot of the times could actually pay for our software within a year, for example. And these are just some further examples that talk about this process. Okay, we're going to do some high-level looks at what we offer for multi-entity management. If you're ever looking for a detailed demonstration or want to see more for yourself, you want to ask more questions and answers around your situation, then do by all means come back to us or go through your partner, and we can arrange a demo to show you this in its full entirety. So what I'm going to do is just show you some of the highlights of what multi-entity management can do for you. So first thing we can offer is that when you log into Dynamics GP, there will be a spot up here to say, hey, which company am I going to be defaulting every time I enter a transaction? And that starts right here. So a user can be given this by default. So when we set up a user in Dynamics GP, we can default which entity is like their home entity, and every time they log in, it will start with this entity up here, which means that whenever I go do a transaction, you will see in our screens that there will be an entity identifier on every transaction to say who owns that transaction in our single database solution. Notice that if I go to a general journal, for example, that same default pops up there. If I decide I'm finished working in that company for a while, I can put in entity 100 here, and now that will be the default for whatever transaction windows I open, and possibly even inquiries and reports. So now I'm going to show you just from a payables transaction very quickly, some of the highlighted features of multi-entity management. So right away you see that we do have an entity identifier on the transaction, like I've said earlier, but also when I do a lookup, I can choose whatever company I want from this list in my organization. And one thing to highlight here, the reason you see these numbers here the way they are is because in multi-entity management, you need to have a segment in your chart of accounts that represents the company. So what you'll find in our setup window is that you'll enter your entity segment in this field here, and in my sample database, which is Fabricam, it has a 3-segment chart and the entity is the first segment. So long as that segment is somewhere in your chart, then you're good to go with our solution. If you're an existing GP user, there's going to be a process for you to consolidate your information that you currently have in your databases to the multi-entity management single database solution, or you can start with opening balances in a brand new database. Either way, if you don't have the entity segment in your current environment, that's when you will add it as you go to our solution moving forward. Back to the payables transaction entry window. The other thing I want to highlight here is that this window also is locked down by security in our solution. So remember I said if a user logs in, let's say they only have access to New York, then when they do a lookup on companies in here, once they've logged in, they're not going to see any other company to select here but New York. So that is how our security kicks in. And by the way, this security at the single database level for multiple entities is only available in multi-entity management. Inherent GP on its own cannot do this. If I put in an example here, we do have a field here for cost center, and I'll talk about this more in just a minute. The other field I want to talk about here is the vendor ID. So the other thing that our multi-entity management can do from your master file records, and this is optional, but let's say you have 1,000 vendors in your organization, and this company I'm entering for really only deals with 10 or 12 in my sample database. So in multi-entity management, we have the ability to restrict down the vendors that you only want someone to see when they're entering a transaction for this entity. So when I do a lookup on vendors here, there could be 150 vendors in the lookup, but we have the ability to restrict this down to like 20 to 30. And that type of restriction on master file records can work for customers, vendors, inventory, and warehouse locations. All those areas can manage that type of restriction. I can put an invoice number like normal, put in a purchase amount. We'll leave taxes out of this to keep it easy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the distributions window. And in multi-entity management, what happens is that when you enter the entity code here, and if you use a second segment, that you could be your department or cost center, for example, then we are going to put that in here in this part of your distribution here. So I guess what I'm saying at a high level is that the vendor card defaults all your expenses normally. In multi-entity management, we're only going to take that expense account that's here from the natural account, and we will ignore the other segments and put in what entity and cost center you put here to match. That's called our account substitution process. For accounts payable, we will substitute the entity here so that there's one AP control account per entity, just like standard GP. And the reason we do that is when a person's entering a transaction for this company in this cost center, they normally want the distributions to match. And that's something that we do in our solution with the account substitution feature. Again, a user can type over this like standard GP or type in an account they know. All that is no different than standard GP. And again, at a high level, we don't touch any of the business logic in Dynamics GP. All that works as per normal. Our tables for multi-entity management run parallel to the Dynamics GP tables, and we reference all of our information with those transactions in GP itself. Now, the other nice thing we can do here is I want to show you that account substitution again very quickly. So I'm going to do it again, but this time use entity 000. Okay, and now the substitution For the accounts, we'll go to the 000 company and 00 department here. And accounts payable goes to company 000. But what I want to say here that's unique to our solution is that let's say we want to drive all the expense from this invoice that came to my head office to another entity. All I have to do is type in that entity's segment code here to expense it all to them, tab through the line, and then our solution will bring in the intercompany accounts below. So there's our expense for 300 here as a debit, and there's our intercompany due from 300 credit. There's our accounts payable credit because 000 owns the invoice, and there's our intercompany due to 000 debit to balance this transaction off. So that's going to happen every time you use multi-entity management. We use a what you see is what you get approach. We do it on all sub-ledger levels, and like this screen, where possible, we'll show it in unposted transaction windows. I can even split up this distribution on the fly, put the rest to company 200's expense account, tab through the line, and the intercompanies will recalculate and rebalance. And these intercompany accounts cannot be changed. They are user-proof as well. You'll see they reset to what they should be. So that's just a small sample of what intercompany can do for your multi-entity management. You'll find that when you run a trial balance on all your intercompany accounts and multi-entity management at any time, your debits will always equal the credits, and so reconciliation will be nil. Another nice feature we have in accounts payable is this allocation ID feature. So you can have as many templates or allocation templates as I call them, and these can be used both from a payables and receivables perspective. But I'm going to pull up a template I created for this transaction, and when you enter this template into this transaction, you can hit this arrow and you can review that distribution, and you can actually change it on the fly. So I could actually make this 30% here, leave the rest, and I could put this to another account like so. And when I go OK and hit distributions, you'll see here that there are my 3 accounts that come in. There's my percentage amounts that equal $1,000. And look, those distributions for allocation crossed entities, so you can see that we did the intercompany transactions to balance that off as well. So we can balance integration, we can balance intercompanies for you through our allocation like so for you automatically. If you do integrations with us through either SmartConnect or eConnect or another wrapper product like Scribe or any eConnect solution, we have abilities to add our pieces to it so that when those get in, you can tell our system to do the intercompany for you, and it'll happen automatically for us to do it. You don't have to worry about that part. You can just put in these entries in your integration, turn on a switch that says do the intercompany, and then we will do this part for you. Okay, so that's pretty much what you see from a voucher perspective. Very quickly, showing you some centralized processing. This is the Select Payables Checks window where you go in and select your checks in Dynamics GP. Everything is exactly like Dynamics GP except this part that multi-entity management handles here. So if you choose Decentralized in the Select Check Run here, and I mark these 4 entities, down here I can put in my check criteria. Let's put in invoices that are all due on the 30th of the month. And then all I have to do is just select these 4 companies in the decentralized mode, put it in a batch ID. When I hit Build Batch, what multi-entity management is going to do is it's going to create 4 separate batches, 1 for each entity. In this case, 000 is going to have all its own invoices to be paid with its bank account. This batch will have all the 100 invoices to be paid with 100's bank account, and so on. So it's really like doing 4 check runs at once for your companies, for your 4 companies, sorry. If you choose centralized, this means that you're going to have 1 check run. It's going to look at a setup that we have that says, hey, this parent entity can pay all the invoices on behalf of these other entities. And when we run this, it's going to show all those invoices to be paid all from the central entity's bank account. Now, I've done these batches ahead of time, and here's how you can look at them in detail from what it's done. So this is my decentralized batch, and if I highlight a travel company and sort by the transactions it's selected, you can see that it picked up all the invoices that relate to Entity 100 here, and they will all be paid from Entity 100's bank account. So that is the decentralized payment process. If you use the centralized payment process, you can see here when I highlight a travel company that it's paying invoices that are for itself, the 000 entity, but it's also paying invoices on behalf of other companies as well. So this vendor will essentially get one check from you, and you can modify the remittance to show which companies these transactions came from. When we print and post this batch, all of these trial balances for all these entities for the invoices that are paid will be reduced, and plus all these entities here that were paid on behalf of the 000 bank account will all have intercompany due to due froms to match in the posting journal. So again, to highlight with our solution, we have a full audit trail capability with our intercompany. If I have to void this check and all this intercompany is in it, all the intercompany will void in reverse of all the entries that we did originally. Here's what I like about multi-entity management in Dynamics GP. When we do inquiries and reports in any area of Dynamics GP, you're going to have this list view in here. And this essentially says, when I mark this, it's like what's outstanding in these 4 companies for a travel company here. So that's basically looking at 4 companies, what's just outstanding invoices for those 4. And if I scroll down, you can see there's a lot of invoices against 000 and then other invoices outstanding for the other entities here. What most people would probably do, however, is just mark one company, look at it, and there's the information I can see. And again, with our security feature, if I only logged in and had access to New York only, you would see here that the other entities would not appear in this view, and that's how our security kicks in to only let me see New York's company and not any other companies in this database. If it's really handy, I think if a vendor calls you and you have and they talk about an invoice but they don't know which company it belongs to, you can mark all your entities like so, get the invoice number from them, do a redisplay, and now you can see that invoice belongs to company 100. And then standard GP applies here. You can drill in, look at the document in detail, excuse me, and you can also then look at the distributions of that entry here. And now you can see here that there's a lot of intercompany, so you can see that the full audit trail of all the intercompany that occurred in this transaction is viewable right down to when you drill in and look at the transaction. Again, that is only unique to what multi-entity management can offer you. If you're going to run any reports in Dynamics GP, such as a trial balance, then again, we're going to have that list view so you can filter the information as you want it to be done in the report. So in this case, I'm just doing a trial balance for entity 100. If I want to do a consolidated report, I can just mark all the entities here, and then I have a consolidated trial balance instead of a single company trial balance like here. But if I print this report, now you'll see very shortly that the system filters out all the information against the travel company and other vendors and just shows you them for company 100 only. So there's my travel company. There are all my invoices just for 100 because that's the only thing we want to see for our trial balance here for company 100. So down here would be my subledger total for company 100 at this time, which should match your control total in the GL. Again, if I want to look at a consolidated trial balance, I just mark all my entities here, hit print, and now you can see that we'll have the entire organization's trial balance in this report. So there's a travel company now, and you can see there are all my different transactions entered against a travel company. So you truly are just using one master file record to enter transactions against a physical vendor in your organization. So here you can see there's my total for a travel company for the whole organization, and down at the bottom of this report, this would be the total for the whole organization. So you can get some good ideas on cash flow and things like this. And run reports really quickly, you know, as you want to slice and dice how you want to look at that information. Lastly, as soon as you implement multi-entity management in Dynamics GP, this report tool is from Dynamics GP. It's called SmartList. If you're not familiar with it, it's really a nice tool for end users to use. It's the data's all read-only, so you can't hurt anything. And when you initially use it, it primarily comes in 2 flavors: the ability to look at master file records, and then the ability to look at transactions. There are other tools that you can use to combine that information and show it accordingly. I just want to show you that when you see the payables transactions in the SmartList that I'm showing you here by example, we will add the entity identifier to all those transactions. So then you can actually filter information if you have access to multiple entities to an entity's information that you want to see. Now, if I had logged in as Darian and only had access to Entity 100, this is all I would see from this report. I would not see any other company's information. So that kind of gives you a high-level overview of what multi-entity can offer you. Obviously, we do intercompanies in areas that most GP doesn't handle itself or other third parties in the separate database configuration. So we can do things around fixed assets. We can do fixed asset transfers with intercompany. We can do, I won't go through these in detail, but we can do bank transfers, and you'll have the intercompany if it's across two companies' bank accounts. If you're doing bank recs and you want to do an entry to another company, then we'll do the intercompany there, and so on. So again, just to highlight some of the key features from our PowerPoint slide here to summarize the end of the presentation. So again, the navigation pane lets you see which entity you're currently working in. We have allocation templates, and we have intercompany transactions fully automated throughout multi-entity management for your environment. We have the ability to filter users for security, so they only have access to the entities that you want them to have access to in the single database environment. You have the ability to filter master file records, and you can filter them for vendors, customers, items, and warehouse locations. When you're entering transactions, you can see which entity it's going to go to, and you can see that if you use allocation templates, we'll manage all the intercompany for you as you enter your allocation expenses accordingly. We can actually set up substitutions with accounts so that if you're always putting a static set of codes, then we can have defaults automatically for different transactions to bring in the different segments as required. And again, we have this ability to filter your information as you can see it, and based on the user's access to the entities that they are allowed to see within inquiries and reports. Here's the final slide I want to show you that really summarizes a lot of the benefits of our solution. And that pretty much summarizes multi-entity management. Deidre, do you want to take over now?
Sure. I'll run the show, Darian. We only have one question at this time, so if anyone has further questions, please go ahead and submit them. The first question from Debbie: can your system allow for multiple intercompany accounts depending on type of intercompany? For example, royalties, commissions, funding would be 3 different intercompany accounts between the same 2 entities.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Debbie, and I think what you're talking about is, I think if you hit a specific account, then it pulls up a specific set of intercompanies that you want it to do. Multi-entity management doesn't currently operate in that manner. It uses a fixed set of intercompanies that just do a do to, do from, that are really like just 2 sets of accounts between the different organizations. However, we are looking at adding that piece somewhere down the road for multi-entity, and if you require it, this is the beauty of our system and our solution. If there's a piece you want to add to it that multi-entity management currently doesn't have, if we think it's going to benefit the entire multi-entity management environment, both for you and other end users, then we will normally share in building that piece between you and us. So for example, if it took us 40 hours to build that piece, on average we will split the difference on that and say, okay, for 20 hours we'll subsidize the other 20 hours to build it, and then you only need to pay maintenance on that 20 hours for 1 year as we support you for that new piece, and then you only pay core maintenance on multi-entity for years 2 and beyond, as that piece will be incorporated into the product. But it is something we're looking at on the radar for multi-entity somewhere down the road to add.
Okay, the next actually back-to-back questions from Jennifer. How would this work using the projects module, and does this work with project accounting?
Yeah, very good question, Jennifer, and the answer is yes for both. So multi-entity management works in all these modules that you see in my triangle here, and it also works in collections as well. So in project, how it currently works is projects are assigned to different entities, and then you can assign cost centers accordingly, either by entity or you can, and usually they're set up at the entity level as well. so that everything you enter, every project is managed at the entity level. All of your information you enter for billing goes to that entity, and we filter it all out accordingly. I don't believe we have intercompany within project yet, but it is something that we're looking at. So if there's something there that you can see where maybe a particular person needs to do billing and they're in a different entity and they want to apply to that project, I don't think we do intercompany there just yet, but it is something that we can do if we get enough end users pushing that area, or we can add it for you as part of the solution.
Okay, the next question is from Peter. Do I have to edit all of my smart lists and reports to enable multi-entity?
That's a very good question, and so I guess the answer there is you're an existing GP user and you're going to go to our solution. So if you have all your smart lists already there and then we bring multi-entity management into that database, we will update all the default ones, but in your existing smart list you just have to add the column in ours for the entity column to be in there. So in other words, your smart list will be like normal where you have transactions, but we won't have the column for entity there, but you can put it in to update all your reports with that entity identifier as you go. If you're implementing brand new with multi-entity management, as soon as you implement our solution and you enter transactions in, the entity ID is automatically assigned to them, so they'll be automatically on there from SmartList.
Okay, and another question from Peter. Does this work with analytical accounting?
Yeah, very good question, Peter, and the answer is yes. It works for all the financial modules from what we know. I believe purchasing, sales, and inventory. So if there's a specific area you're interested in, just come back to me later and I'll make sure. I know for sure the financials are totally fine in analytical accounting, and I believe purchasing and sales are as well. We haven't tested inventory, but usually my indicator is that if someone hasn't told me out in the marketplace, because we have so many, we have hundreds of users out there using multi-entity, if it wasn't working, they would be telling me that, and I haven't heard anyone get back to me on that. So analytical accounting does work from a functional perspective. The only thing we do not do is we don't filter or secure analytical codes by entity. So there are ways to manage that as you enter it in analytical accounting, but from just a multi-entity perspective, we don't do any security in that area.
And that is it for questions.
Terrific. Again, here are some benefits to why you'd like to use Binary Stream for any of your software solutions for any of our products. You can go check out our website. We do have 14 other products you can check out. We've been around well over a decade, since 1999. We have hundreds of end users, and we upgrade our products with Dynamics GP and all the service packs that come out. We're very diligent. Our customer service is very highly rated, and we believe we deliver solutions that provide a lot of great value for our end users. So thanks again.
I'd like to finish by thanking you again for joining us and to let you know that everyone who attended will receive a copy of this presentation as well as a link to the recorded version. So thank you again and hope to see you soon.
Bye, everyone.